You assume a backpack is just clean laundry and a phone charger. I believed that until I unzipped the bag at a desolate gas station. Hidden under the shirts was not my brother's clothing, but a secret that made a deputy recoil in terror. The car crash was a lie. When your parents weaponize your loyalty, you have to decide exactly how to make them pay. My name is Kendall Graham, and up until 7:30 this morning, my life was a grid of perfectly aligned boxes. At 34 years old, I had cultivated an existence defined by order. I live in a craftsman bungalow on the quiet edge of Greenville, South Carolina, where the oak trees are old enough to buckle the sidewalks and the neighbors are polite enough to mind their own business. As a senior compliance officer for Crown Ridge Compliance Solutions, my entire career is built on the premise of identifying risk, correcting deviations, and ensuring that the chaotic variables of the corporate world are smoothed into straight, predictable lines. I am good at it. I am the person you call when you want to ensure nothing goes wrong. I am not the person you call when everything has already caught fire. That changed with a single vibration of my phone against the granite kitchen island. I was pouring my second cup of coffee, watching the steam rise against the sunlight streaming through the window. It was a Saturday. My plans involved a run at Paris Mountain and perhaps 3 hours of reading on the porch. The screen lit up. "Mom," I swiped to answer, expecting the usual weekend preamble, a complaint about the humidity, a passive-aggressive comment about my single status, or perhaps a recipe she had found on Facebook. "Kendall," she choked out. The sound of my name, broken and ragged, shattered the Saturday morning silence. My hand froze, the coffee pot hovering in mid-air. It was a sound I had not heard since I was 17. The specific frequency of a woman who has lost control of her world. "Mom, what is it?" I asked, setting the pot down. "Is it Dad?" "It's Mason," she sobbed. The name of my 26-year-old brother came out like a physical blow. "Oh God. Kendall, it's Mason. He's been in a wreck. A bad one." My chest seized. The kitchen seemed to tilt on its axis. Mason, my baby brother, the gentle, soft-spoken boy who still looked at the world with a naivety that terrified me. "Where is he okay, Mom? Talk to me." "Bristol," she gasped. "He was driving up to, I don't know. He was driving. They took him to the trauma center in Bristol. We are 20 minutes away. They said it's critical. Kendall, they don't know if he's going to make it through surgery." My keys were already in my hand before my brain had fully processed the geography. Bristol was a long haul, hours of driving. "I am leaving now," I said, my voice dropping into that professional crisis management register that I used in boardrooms. "I am getting in the car right now." "Wait," she said, her breath hitching. "The backpack. You have to bring the backpack." I paused, hand on the doorknob. "What?" "I packed a backpack for him," she cried. Her logic sounded fractured, delirious with grief. "I was going to mail it to him next week. Just some things he left here. His spare charger, clean clothes. He's going to need them when he wakes up. Kendall, he is going to need his things." "Mom, I don't have time to—" "Mrs. Gable has it," she interrupted, her voice rising in pitch. "I called her. She just ran it over to your porch. Please, Kendall, I need you to bring it. I can't think straight. I just need to know his things are there." It was an absurd request in the face of death, but I knew grief made people fixate on the trivial. If bringing a bag of laundry would calm her down, I would do it. "Okay," I said. "Okay, Mom, I'm grabbing it. I'm coming." "Hurry," she whispered. The line went dead. I threw the front door open. Sure enough, sitting on the porch swing was a dark blue tactical-style backpack. It looked sturdy, nondescript. I didn't see Mrs. Gable, but I didn't have time to wave. I grabbed the top handle of the bag, swinging it up to rush to my SUV. My arm jerked downward. It was heavy, unusually heavy. The density of it surprised me, throwing me off balance for a split second. I had expected the loft of cotton t-shirts and maybe the plastic rattle of a phone charger. This felt solid, like a bag of textbooks or dense machinery. I tossed it onto the passenger seat of my white Ford Explorer. It landed with a dull, heavy thud that didn't sound like fabric. Why is it so heavy? The thought flickered in my mind as I keyed the ignition, but I bulldozed over it with rationalization. Mom probably packed canned food, or shoes, or maybe Mason's old gaming laptop that weighed a ton. It didn't matter. The only thing that mattered was the speedometer and the miles between me and Bristol. I peeled out of the driveway, the tires chirping against the asphalt. I didn't look back at my house. I didn't verify the stove was off. I just drove. 10 minutes later, I was merging onto the highway, cutting across 3 lanes of traffic to get into the fast lane. My heart was hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs. Critical condition. The words looped in my head, as the landscape of South Carolina began to blur into a tunnel of green and gray. My mind drifted back, unbidden, to the dynamic that had defined my entire youth. We were the Graham children, Kendall and Mason, the shield and the shadow. My father, Russell Graham, was a man who moved through life like a storm front, charming when the pressure was high, destructive when the pressure dropped. He was always chasing the next big deal, the next scheme that would fix our finances. And when those deals inevitably fell apart, the rage would come. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. I could see the kitchen of our childhood home. I could hear the sound of Russell slamming a stack of unpaid bills onto the table. In those memories, Mason was always small. Even when he grew taller than me, he seemed small. He would shrink into the corner, eyes wide, terrified of drawing fire, and I would step in front of him, always. It's not his fault. Dad, I forgot to give him the lunch money envelope. Leave him alone. Dad, I broke the mower. I took the shouting. I took the grounding. I took the terrifying disappointment in Russell's eyes so that Mason wouldn't have to. I became the compliance officer of the family long before I got paid for it. I managed the risk. I contained the damage. I protected the asset, and the asset was my brother. Please don't die, I whispered to the empty car. The backpack on the seat next to me shifted slightly as I took a curve at 85 miles per hour. Please, Mace, just hold on. The road stretched out, an endless ribbon of asphalt shimmering in the heat. The mid-morning sun was becoming brutal, glaring off the hood of the car. I reached for my phone, hitting the speed dial for my mother. It rang, and rang, and rang. You have reached the voicemail of Diane Graham. Please leave a... I hung up. I tried Dad. This is Russell. Leave a message. I tried Mason's phone, knowing it was futile, but hoping against logic that he might answer from a hospital bed. Nothing. A cold knot of anxiety began to tighten in my stomach, distinct from the fear of the accident. It was a different flavor of fear, the fear of silence. Why weren't they answering if they were at the hospital? Wouldn't they be clinging to their phones, waiting for me? Or were they in with the doctors? Was it already over? Or was it something else? I looked at the backpack again. The black nylon absorbed the sunlight. It sat there like a passenger, mute and heavy. Kendall surely will run right away. Mom had said to the neighbor. Why did that phrasing feel so specific? I shook my head, forcing my eyes back to the road. Paranoia was a side effect of trauma. I knew that. My brain was trying to find a villain because random car accident was too abstract to fight. I needed to focus. I pushed the accelerator down. The engine roared in protest. I passed a semi-truck, the wind buffeting my SUV. I was driving too fast, reckless, fueled by a cocktail of adrenaline and terror. An hour passed, then 2. The air conditioning in my car was fighting a losing battle against the southern humidity. My throat felt like it was coated in dust. I hadn't taken a sip of water since that first cup of coffee. My hands were shaking, not just from nerves, but from dehydration and the crash of caffeine wearing off. I needed to stop, just for a minute, just to splash water on my face and buy a bottle of Gatorade. If I passed out behind the wheel, I wouldn't be saving anyone. I saw a sign rising out of the heat haze ahead. It wasn't one of the big, shiny travel centers with 50 pumps and a fast food court. It was an old, faded sign, the red paint peeling to reveal the rusted metal beneath. Gas Go, Cranberry Gap. It looked isolated, a relic from a time before the interstate bypassed the local routes. 5 minutes, I told myself. 3 minutes, in and out. I signaled right, the blinker clicking a steady, mocking rhythm. I took the exit ramp, the tires crunching over gravel as the pavement degraded. The station sat alone against a backdrop of dense pines, looking like it had been forgotten by the rest of the world. I pulled up to the pump. There was no one else around, just the hum of the cicadas screaming in the trees and the smell of old gasoline. I put the car in park and killed the engine. The silence that rushed in was deafening. I looked at the backpack one more time. He's going to need his things. I should check, I murmured, my voice sounding thin in the hot air. Make sure she actually packed a charger. If not, I can buy one inside. It was a rationalization, a way to feel useful, a way to connect with my brother by touching his belongings. I didn't know it then. But that decision, the decision to turn off the engine at this specific, God-forsaken coordinate on the map, was the line of demarcation. Behind me was Kendall Graham, the compliance officer, the sister, the daughter. Ahead of me lay something entirely different. I unbuckled my seatbelt, reached over, and grabbed the strap of the heavy backpack. I opened the door and stepped out into the sweltering heat, swinging the bag over my shoulder as I walked toward the dingy glass doors of the station. I was thirsty, I was scared, and I was about to lose everything I thought I knew about the people who raised me. The interior of the gas station at Cranberry Gap was a museum of neglect. As the glass door swung shut behind me, the suffocating heat of the afternoon was replaced by a blast of aggressive, stale air conditioning that smelled of burnt coffee and old motor oil. It was the kind of smell that coats the back of your throat, oily and permanent. The fluorescent lights overhead flickered with a low, dying hum, casting a sickly yellow pallor over the aisles of dusty snack cakes and fading car magazines. There was no one else in the store. The clerk, a man who looked like he had merged with the stool he was sitting on, didn't even look up from his phone when the door chimed. He just sat there, surrounded by walls of cigarettes and lottery tickets, indifferent to the fact that a woman was standing in his shop vibrating with panic. I walked to the cooler at the back. My footsteps on the linoleum sounded loud. Like gunshots in a canyon, I grabbed 2 large bottles of water and a packet of aspirin. My reflection in the glass of the cooler door caught me off guard. I looked deranged. My hair was escaping its clip, and my eyes were wide and frantic. The pupils dilated. I looked like a woman running from a crime scene, not a sister running to a hospital. I paid in cash. I didn't want to wait for the card reader. I threw a $20 bill on the counter, mumbled that he could keep the change, and turned back to the door. "Have a nice day," the clerk droned, his voice flat, clearly not meaning a single syllable of it. Stepping back out into the heat felt like walking into an oven. The air shimmered above the asphalt. The silence of the location was heavy, broken only by the distant cawing of a crow. I walked back to my car, the gravel crunching under my sneakers. I climbed into the driver's seat and locked the door immediately. It was a reflex, a city habit that I hadn't shaken despite the rural setting. I cracked the seal on the first water bottle and downed half of it in one long, desperate gulp. The cool liquid hit my stomach, and I felt a momentary wave of clarity. Okay, Mason, Bristol, 2 hours to go. I wiped my mouth with the back of my hand. My eyes fell on the backpack sitting on the passenger seat. It sat there, innocent and blue, but my mother's voice from the phone call earlier kept snagging in my mind, like a loose thread on a sweater that unravels the whole garment. I packed a backpack for him. Paperwork, important things. I frowned. What kind of paperwork did Mason have that was so urgent he needed it in the ICU? Mason worked IT contracts. He lived in a chaotic apartment filled with pizza boxes and tangled server cables. He didn't have important papers. He barely had a filing system. And the charger. I needed to check for the charger. If she had forgotten it, I needed to buy one here, at this dinosaur of a gas station. Before I got back on the highway, I couldn't risk my phone dying at the hospital. I reached over and pulled the bag onto my lap. It was heavy. I knew that already. But feeling the weight of it on my thighs, pressing down on my legs, it felt wrong. Dense. Dead weight. I found the zippers. They were stiff, as if the bag hadn't been opened in a long time. I tugged the main compartment open. The first thing I saw was a layer of gray t-shirts. They were folded. I stopped. My hands hovered over the fabric. My mother, Diane Graham, was a woman of many virtues, but organization was not one of them. She folded laundry like she was angry at wads of fabric shoved into drawers. These shirts were folded with military precision. The edges were perfectly aligned. The spacing was exact. It looked like a display in a high-end department store, or perhaps the kit of a soldier prepared for inspection. A cold prickle of unease danced down my spine. This wasn't Mom's handiwork. "Just get the charger," I whispered to myself, my voice sounding trembling and small in the enclosed car. I slid my hand down the side of the neat stack of clothes, feeling for the familiar tangle of white cords and plastic adapters. My fingers brushed against something cold and hard. It wasn't the smooth plastic of a phone charger. It felt like thick, industrial plastic, and beneath that, something solid and unforgiving. I pushed the shirts aside. My breath hitched in my throat, a sharp intake of air that burned my lungs. There were no toiletries. There were no snacks. There was no phone charger. Nestled in the center of the bag, cushioned by the meticulously folded clothes, was a clear plastic bag. It was thick, heavy-duty material. Across the top was a strip of red adhesive tape, sealed tight. Printed on the bag in stark, black block letters were the words, "Evidence, do not tamper." Below that was a white label with fields for case numbers, dates, and chain of custody signatures. I stared at it. My brain refused to process the visual input. It was like looking at a foreign object that had teleported into my reality. I was a compliance officer. I dealt with spreadsheets, with audit logs, with regulatory filings. I did not deal with evidence bags. I leaned closer, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. Inside the sealed bag, there was a hard drive. Not a consumer-grade portable drive you buy at an electronics store, but a ruggedized, metal-encased drive that looked like it could survive a bomb blast. Next to it was a silver USB stick, also encased in metal. And there was a key. It was a small, brass key, the kind that opens a post office box or a gym locker. It was loose inside the plastic bag, sliding against the metal drive. I could see an engraving on the head of the key, L17. I pulled my hands back as if the bag was radioactive. I slammed my back against the driver's seat, gasping for air. "What is this?" I said aloud. "Mom, what is this?" "This wasn't a mistake. You don't accidentally pack a police evidence bag instead of underwear. You don't accidentally seal a government-grade hard drive in a tamper-proof pouch and hand it to your neighbor to give to your daughter." The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow, the weight, the urgency. Kendall will surely run right away. I wasn't a courier of comfort. I was a mule. My parents had turned me into a mule for stolen police evidence. A wave of nausea rolled over me. I looked at the bag again. The red tape seemed to glare at me. The case number was a long string of digits that meant nothing to me, but clearly meant everything to someone else. Someone else. The thought cut through the panic like a knife. If this was evidence, it belonged to the police, or it had been taken from the police. Either way, possession of it was dangerous. I suddenly felt very exposed. The tinted windows of my Explorer felt as thin as paper. I looked up and scanned the parking lot. The heat haze made the distance wobble, but my eyes locked onto a vehicle parked near the exit of the lot. In the shadow of a large billboard, it was a pickup truck. Dark gray, domestic model. It was facing me. It hadn't been there when I pulled in. Or had it, I couldn't remember. I had been so focused on my thirst. The engine of the truck was running. I could see the faint vibration of the exhaust pipe, but no one was getting out. No one was pumping gas. The windshield was dark, reflecting the harsh sunlight, so I couldn't see the driver, but I could feel the gaze. It was a sensation I knew well from my job, the feeling of being audited, of being watched by someone looking for a mistake. But this felt predatory. Why were they just sitting there? The lot was empty. There were 6 other pumps. They weren't waiting for a spot. Paranoia, cold and sharp, flooded my system. Were they following me? Had they followed me from Greenville? Or had they been waiting here? "Stop it," I told myself. "You are spiraling. It's just a truck. It's just a farmer resting in the AC." But I looked down at the bag on my lap. The red tape, evidence. Normal logic did not apply when you were holding a bag of stolen evidence. I needed to hide it. I needed to hide it right now. My hands were shaking violently. I reached for the zipper of the backpack. I tried to pull the clothes back over the plastic bag, to bury the secret. My fingers were clumsy, numb with shock. I grabbed the water bottle I had opened, intending to take another drink to calm my nerves, but my grip failed. The bottle slipped. Ice-cold water splashed all over the console, drenching the gear shift and soaking into the fabric of my shorts. "Damn it," I hissed. I scrambled to grab the bottle, water dripping everywhere. I used the hem of my shirt to wipe the console, my eyes darting back to the gray truck. It hadn't moved. The driver hadn't reacted. They were just sitting there, watching. I zipped the backpack shut. The sound of the zipper closing seemed incredibly loud in the silence of the car. I shoved the bag onto the floor of the passenger side, kicking it under the dash as far as it would go. I couldn't go to Bristol. The thought was clear and absolute. I couldn't take this to a hospital. I couldn't take this to my parents. If they gave me this, they were involved. They were compromised. Mom packed this. The betrayal tasted like bile in my throat. My mother, who cried over Hallmark movies, who baked zucchini bread for the church bake sale, had packed a felony into a backpack and sent her daughter out onto the highway with it. I needed help. Real help. I needed the police. But could I trust the police? The bag was police evidence. Had it been stolen from them or by them? I looked out the side window. At the edge of the gas station property, partially obscured by kudzu vines, was a green directional sign. Madison County Substation. 6 miles. 6 miles. That was close. A substation meant sheriffs. It meant official records. If I walked in there and put this bag on the counter, surely that was the right thing to do. That was the compliant thing to do. I had to risk it. I couldn't stay here in this parking lot with that gray truck staring at me like a wolf watching a lamb. I took a deep breath. Start the car. Drive calm. Do not speed. I turned the key. The engine caught. I shifted into reverse. I backed out slowly, keeping my eyes fixed on the rearview mirror. The gray truck remained stationary. I shifted into drive and pulled toward the exit, my heart rate hovering somewhere around 140 beats per minute. I turned right onto the two-lane blacktop, heading toward the sign that pointed to Madison County. As I accelerated, checking the mirror every 2 seconds, I saw it. The gray truck pulled out. It didn't signal. It didn't rush. It just rolled out of the shadows and onto the road behind me, keeping a steady, deliberate distance. They weren't just resting. They weren't a farmer. I gripped the wheel until my fingers ached. The road ahead was winding and empty, cutting through dense woods that blocked out the cell signal. I was alone. I had a backpack full of secrets I didn't understand, a family that had set me up, and a shadow in my rearview mirror that was matching my speed, mile for mile. I pressed the gas pedal down, and the gray truck did the same. The Madison County substation was a squat brick building that looked more like a dental office than a bastion of law enforcement, but to me, it looked like a sanctuary. I drifted the Explorer into the lot, tires screeching slightly, and threw the transmission into park before the vehicle had completely stopped moving. I did not look for the gray truck. I did not care if it was behind me. I had crossed the invisible line onto state property, and for the first time in 20 minutes, I felt a fraction of the crushing weight lift from my chest. I grabbed the backpack. It felt heavier now, weighted down by the knowledge of what was inside. I sprinted toward the glass double doors, bursting into the lobby with the frantic energy of a woman who was being chased by fire. The lobby was cool and smelled of floor wax and stale coffee. Behind a high counter fronted with safety glass sat a deputy. He was young, perhaps 25, with a buzz cut and a uniform that looked a size too big for his shoulders. He was scrolling through a smartphone, his boots propped up on the rungs of his stool. He looked up, annoyed by the intrusion. "Help me," I gasped, slamming the backpack onto the melamine counter. The sound echoed in the small room. The deputy blinked, slowly lowering his phone. "Ma'am, you need to calm down. Is someone chasing you?" "My parents," I said, the words tumbling out before I could filter them. "No, not them. Someone else. I don't know." I was incoherent. I knew I sounded like a lunatic. I took a deep breath, forcing my compliance officer brain to take the wheel. "I have something. I was given something I should not have. I need you to take it," the deputy sighed, clearly categorizing me as a domestic dispute or a mental health check. He stood up, hitching his belt. "Okay, ma'am. Let's start with your name. What do you have?" I didn't say my name. I reached for the zipper of the backpack. My hands were still shaking so badly I fumbled with the tab twice before gripping it. "I found this," I said. "My mother packed it. She told me it was clothes." I ripped the zipper open. I shoved the neatly folded gray t-shirts aside, violent and messy, exposing the plastic guts of the bag, the red tape, the bold black letters, the brass key. "Look," I commanded. The deputy leaned forward, his expression bored. He looked down through the glass partition at the open bag. His eyes locked onto the red adhesive seal. He saw the case number. He saw the text, "Evidence. Do not tamper." The color drained from his face so fast it was frightening. It wasn't a gradual paling. It was instantaneous, as if someone had pulled a plug. He went from flushed and bored to sheet white in a single second. He scrambled back, his chair clattering against the wall behind him. His hand went instinctively to his holster, not drawing the weapon, but resting on it as a source of comfort. "Ma'am," he said. His voice was no longer bored. It was tight, high-pitched, and laced with genuine terror. "Step away from the counter. Do not touch that bag again." "I just want to give it to you," I said, confused by the intensity of his reaction. I expected questions, not fear. "I said step back," he shouted. He grabbed a radio mic from his shoulder. "Dispatch, this is Vance at the substation. I have a Code 99 situation in the lobby. I need a sealed perimeter. Repeat, sealed perimeter. Contact the State Bureau immediately. Tell them it is a retrieval. Priority 1. He looked at me through the glass, his eyes wide. "Ma'am, put your hands where I can see them. Do not reach into your pockets. Do not reach for your phone." He moved to a panel on the wall and hit a large red button. The locks on the front doors slammed home with a magnetic thud that shook the frame. I was locked in. "Am I under arrest?" I asked, my voice trembling. "You are detained for your own safety and mine," Vance said, He wouldn't take his eyes off the backpack. It was as if I had placed a live cobra on the counter. "Just stand there. Don't move." The next 30 minutes were a blur of flashing lights outside the frosted glass. I stood in the middle of the lobby, arms wrapped around myself, watching shadows move quickly beyond the doors. The radio behind the counter chattered constantly, but Vance had turned the volume down so I couldn't hear the specifics. He just kept watching me, sweating. Then, the back door of the station office opened. A woman walked in. She didn't look like a cop. She looked like a shark in a tailored navy blazer. She was tall, with hair pulled back in a severe no-nonsense knot. Her eyes were sharp, scanning the room, assessing threats, calculating angles. She moved with a terrifying economy of motion. She walked straight to the counter, ignored Vance, and looked at the backpack. She didn't flinch. She just stared at the case number for 5 long seconds. Then she turned her gaze to me. It felt like being scanned by an X-ray machine. "I am Agent Tessa Harrow, State Bureau of Investigation," she said. Her voice was cool, stripped of any southern warmth. "Come with me." She buzzed the door open from the inside. I walked through the gate, legs feeling like jelly. She led me into a small, windowless interview room. There was a metal table and 3 chairs. She pointed to one. I sat. She didn't sit. She stood by the door, crossing her arms. "That bag," she began, "is not supposed to exist outside of a secure vault in the state capitol. The fact that it is sitting on Deputy Vance's counter is a catastrophic failure of protocol." "I didn't steal it," I said, defensive tears stinging my eyes. "I told you. My mother—" "I don't care about your mother right now," Tessa interrupted. She leaned in, her voice dropping an octave, becoming deadly serious. "I need you to answer one question, and I need the absolute truth. Who told you to take it out of the house?" "My mother," I repeated. "Diane Graham. She said it was clothes for my brother." Tessa narrowed her eyes. "She told you to move it specifically." "She begged me to. She said my brother needed his things." Tessa pulled out a small notepad and made a quick scratch. "And where were you going?" "Bristol, the trauma center." Tessa stopped writing. She looked up. "Why Bristol?" "My brother." I choked out. The reality of Mason's condition came rushing back, momentarily eclipsing the fear of the police. "Mason, he was in a car accident. He is in critical condition. I was rushing to see him. That is why I had the bag. Mom said she packed it for him." Tessa stared at me. Her expression didn't soften, but it shifted. The suspicion was replaced by something else, pity, or perhaps just a cold realization of facts. She pulled a radio from her belt. "Harrow to tech team. What is the status of the subject's vehicle?" A crackly voice responded instantly. "Agent Harrow, we have a hit. We found a device, hardwired into the rear wheel well. Professional installation. Looks like a passive GPS unit with a cellular uplink." My blood ran cold. "A tracker," I whispered. Tessa looked at me. "You aren't a courier, Miss Graham. You are a lure." "I don't understand," I said, shaking my head. "Why would they track me?" "I'm just going to the hospital." "The tracker wasn't put there today," Tessa said. "If it is hardwired, it has been there for days, maybe weeks. Someone wanted to know exactly where you were going the moment that bag left the house." But the accident..." I stood up, panic rising. "I need to call the hospital. Please, if I am being detained, you have to let me check on my brother. He could be dying right now. He could be dead." Tessa watched me for a moment. She seemed to be weighing the cost of the truth against the benefit of my cooperation. Finally, she nodded. "Sit down," she ordered. She took out her own phone. She didn't ask for the number. She clearly already had the resources to find it. She dialed, put it on speaker, and set it on the metal table between us. It rang. "Bristol Regional Medical Center. Patient information." A cheerful voice answered. "This is Agent Harrow, State Bureau. Identification number 4492. I need to verify the admission status of a patient. Mason Graham, male, 26, admitted this morning via emergency transport. Possible vehicular trauma." There was the sound of typing on the other end. Silence stretched for 10 seconds. 10 seconds where I held my breath, praying to hear that he was there, even if he was hurt, because if he was there, then the world still made sense. "I am sorry, Agent," the voice came back. "I have no record of a Mason Graham admitted today. I checked the ER log and the trauma bay intake. No one by that name. No John Does fitting the description either." Check incoming transfers, Tessa said, her eyes locked on mine. Checking nothing? No scheduled transfers? We haven't had a major vehicle accident intake all morning. Actually, it has been a quiet Saturday. Thank you, Tessa said. She tapped the screen, ending the call. The silence that followed was heavier than the backpack. He isn't there, I whispered. My voice sounded hollow. There is no accident. No, Tessa said. There is no accident. I slumped back in the chair. The room spun. The tears that had been threatening to fall finally spilled over. But they weren't tears of grief anymore. They were tears of shock. My mother's voice echoed in my head. The sobbing. The hiccups. It's critical. Kendall, it was a performance. An Oscar-worthy performance designed to get me into the car. Designed to get me to grab the backpack. They lied, I said. My own mother. She lied about Mason dying. They needed you to move the package, Tessa said. She walked around the table and sat in the chair opposite me. They needed the backpack out of the house, but they couldn't be the ones to carry it. They knew the house was being watched, or they suspected it, so they used the one person no one would suspect. The daughter with the clean record, the compliance officer. She knew my job. Of course she did. Why? I asked. What is in the bag? Drugs money. Tessa leaned forward. Her face was grim, illuminated by the harsh fluorescent lights. Miss Graham, if that bag was full of heroin, I would book you, and we would be done. If it was money, I would call the Treasury boys. This is neither. She lowered her voice, speaking with a quiet intensity that terrified me more than the shouting deputy had. That bag contains a chain of evidence that went missing from a federal custody locker 3 years ago. It contains the kind of data that destroys careers, judges, district attorneys, precinct captains. The things on that hard drive are not just illegal, they are structural. She paused, letting the weight of her words settle on me. The people who want that bag back, they aren't criminals in the traditional sense. They are the people who run the system, and right now, you and I are the only two people who know where it is. She stood up, buttoning her blazer. The accident was a lie, Kendall. But the danger is very, very real. That thing in the backpack is what keeps police chiefs awake at night. They aren't afraid of catching the bad guys. They are afraid of this specific secret getting out, and your family just handed it to you. I looked at my hands. They were trembling. I thought about the gray truck. I thought about Mason, wherever he actually was. What do I do? I asked. Tessa looked at the door, then back at me. You stop being a sister, she said, and you start being a witness. The interrogation room seemed to shrink with every passing second. The air was recycled and cold, vibrating with the low hum of the building's ventilation system. But I felt feverishly hot. I sat with my hands clasped on the metal table, staring at the scratches in the surface, little chaotic grooves left by handcuffs and nervous fingernails over the years. My phone had been taken. My car keys were gone. My backpack, the catalyst for this nightmare, was sealed in an evidence locker somewhere in the bowels of the building. Agent Tessa Harrow did not let me rest. She had shifted gears from the shock and awe tactic of the lobby to a surgical, rhythmic dismantling of my life history. She sat across from me, a notepad open, her pen hovering like a scalpel. Let's talk about money, Tessa said. It was not a question. Financial pressure is the only reason a family turns on its own. It is the universal solvent for loyalty. Tell me about Russell and Diane Graham. They are comfortable, I stammered, trying to reconcile the parents I knew with the people who had orchestrated this morning's deception. Dad is in sales. Mom works part-time at the library. Tessa raised an eyebrow. A microscopic movement that screamed skepticism. Sales, that is a broad term. Is he good at it? He has good years and bad years, I admitted. He calls himself an entrepreneur. He has had a lot of ventures, real estate flipping, a car wash franchise, some import-export thing with vitamin supplements, and recently, Tessa pressed, think, Kendall. In the last 6 months, has the temperature in the house changed? Have there been hushed conversations, sudden expenses, sudden austerity? I closed my eyes, forcing my brain to replay the Sunday dinners I usually spent half listening to. Dad was excited recently, I said slowly. About 2 weeks ago, he said he had found a structural opportunity. That was his phrase. He said for the first time, he wasn't just playing the market, he was going to be the house. The house always wins, Tessa murmured, writing something down. Did he say who he was working with? No, he never shares details until the check clears. Superstitious. I paused, a memory surfacing with sickening clarity. But Mom, she was different. She was anxious. Last Tuesday, she came to my office for lunch. She never does that. What did she want? She brought me a tuna sandwich and a stack of papers. She said Dad was restructuring their retirement accounts for tax purposes. She wanted to know if I would sign a durable power of attorney, just in case something happened to them. She said she wanted me to have access to their accounts to manage the flow, if they were incapacitated. Did you sign it? Tessa asked, her voice sharpening. No, I told her I needed to read it over. I'm a compliance officer. I don't sign anything without reviewing the fine print. She got brittle. She said I didn't trust them. She took the papers back and said she would handle it herself. Tessa set her pen down. The click of plastic against metal echoed in the small room. She wasn't asking for help managing their money. Kendall, she was looking for a clean identity, a place to wash assets. If you had signed that, your name would be on whatever accounts they are moving this money through. What money? I demanded. You keep talking like they robbed a bank. That bag had a hard drive and a key. Tessa leaned back, crossing her arms. She looked at me for a long moment, deciding how much of the curtain to pull back. Do you know what civil asset forfeiture is? She asked, vaguely. Police seize money suspected of being used in crimes. Correct. It is a massive revenue stream, millions of dollars in cash, cars, property. Usually, it gets logged, processed, and eventually folded into the department budget. But in this state, we have a problem. For the last 18 months, we have had discrepancies. Large seizures, drug money, illegal gambling proceeds that get logged at the scene, but vanish before they hit the evidence vault. We are talking about 6 figures disappearing into thin air, erased from the digital chain of custody. She tapped the table with her index finger. We suspected a ring, dirty cops skimming off the top, or stealing the whole take, but we couldn't prove it because the digital records were being altered from the inside. That bag you were carrying, the case number on that red tape corresponds to a raid conducted 4 days ago. A raid on a safe house used by a cartel distributor. The preliminary report said they found nothing. No cash, no ledger. I stared at her, the pieces falling into place with a horrifying click. But the bag exists, Tessa said grimly. Which means the raid wasn't empty. It means the team on the ground found the jackpot, seized it, and then pretended it never happened. That hard drive likely contains the original body camera footage or the digital forensic logs that prove the money was there. And the key that opens the physical location where they stashed the cash until the heat died down. L-17, I whispered. Exactly. Your father didn't find a business opportunity. Kendall, he found a fence. Or maybe he is the fence. Someone in law enforcement needed a civilian to hold the insurance policy, the evidence that keeps everyone honest in a criminal conspiracy. They gave it to your parents for safekeeping. And my parents gave it to me, I finished, feeling sick. Because if the police raided their house, they would find nothing. And if you got caught, Tessa added brutally, you are the estranged daughter living across the state. Easy to disavow, or if you delivered it successfully, you are none the wiser. But why today? Why the fake accident? Because something spooked them, an internal affairs audit, maybe, or a rival within the ring. They needed to move the insurance policy to a new location immediately, and you were the fastest courier available. I put my head in my hands. It was too much. The betrayal was so absolute it felt like a physical amputation. They hadn't just used me. They had framed me. I need to go home, I said, my voice muffled. You cannot go home, Tessa said. You cannot go to work. You cannot call your friends. As of this moment, Kendall Graham has ceased to exist on the grid. What about Mason? I looked up, desperation clawing at my throat. If the accident was a lie, where is he? Is he part of this? Tessa stood up and walked to the door. She opened it slightly and signaled to someone outside. A moment later, she returned with a tablet computer. We have had a surveillance team on your parents' house for the last hour, purely observational. We tapped into the street cameras and a neighbor's doorbell cam. She slid the tablet across the table to me. The screen showed a grainy, live feed of my childhood home. The front lawn was impeccably mowed. Mom's hydrangeas were blooming blue and purple. It looked peaceful. Watch the window, Tessa instructed. Second floor, left side. It was Mason's old bedroom. I watched. Nothing happened for a minute. Then, a figure walked past the window. It was Mason. He looked paced, agitated. He stopped and looked out at the street. "He's alive," I breathed, relief washing over me. "Keep watching," Tessa said. A second figure appeared behind him. It was my father. Russell put a hand on Mason's shoulder. It didn't look like a comforting gesture. It looked firm. He pulled Mason away from the window and closed the blinds. "That doesn't look like a family grieving a car accident," Tessa noted. "And it doesn't look like a young man who is free to leave. We have seen your mother coming and going from the garage, but Mason has not stepped outside. And look at the front porch." She zoomed in on a still image taken 20 minutes ago. Sitting on a patio chair, casually reading a newspaper, was a man I didn't recognize. He was wearing jeans and a polo shirt, but he sat with the posture of a sentry. "Who is that?" I asked. "We don't know yet, but he isn't a neighbor. He is security. Your brother isn't just home, Kendall. He is being guarded." "He's a hostage," I said, the realization turning my blood to ice. "They are keeping him there to make sure." "To make sure you deliver the package," Tessa finished. "They are using him as leverage. If you don't show up with the backpack, they have Mason." I stood up, the chair screeching against the floor. "I have to go back. I have to tell them I have the bag. I have to trade it for him." "Sit down," Tessa barked. It was a command, not a request. "If you go back there, you are dead. Both of you." "I can't just leave him." "You aren't leaving him. You are getting him out. But you do it my way." She swiped the screen of the tablet. "There is one more thing you need to see." This came in from the traffic cams near Cranberry Gap. A new image appeared. It was the gas station where I had stopped. The timestamp was from 40 minutes ago. The image showed my white Explorer pulling out of the lot, and right behind it, pulling out of the shadows, was the gray pickup truck. "We ran the plates," Tessa said softly. "It is a dummy corporation. Standard practice for undercover vehicles. But we traced the VIN number through the fleet maintenance logs." She looked me dead in the eye. "That truck is assigned to the vice squad of the Bristol precinct. The driver wasn't a random tail. Kendall, he was an escort." I felt the room tilt. "An escort. They knew you would stop, or they were tracking you the whole time. That truck was ensuring the package made it to its destination. But when you turned off toward the substation, instead of getting back on the highway, that is when the plan broke." "He followed me," I said, remembering the grill in my rearview mirror. "He followed me until I turned into the station lot." "Yes, and the moment you walked into a police station with that bag, you became a loose end. The driver of that truck has certainly called it in by now. The people who sent him know you have gone rogue. They know the bag is in police custody." "So I'm safe here, right?" I asked, looking at the walls. "This is a police station." Tessa laughed, a short, bitter sound devoid of humor. "Kendall, the people looking for you are the police, or at least, they wear the same badge I do. They have the same access codes. They know the same frequencies. You are not safe here. You are sitting in a glass house and the people outside have a lot of stones." She leaned in close, her voice dropping to a whisper. "From this moment on, you are not facing your family. You are facing a system that is designed to protect itself above all else, a blue wall, and that wall is about to fall on you." "So what do we do?" I asked, my voice trembling. "If they know I'm here, they will come for me. They will hurt Mason." "They don't know you are here," Tessa corrected. "They know the car is here. They know the bag might be here, but they don't know who you have talked to. They don't know if you opened the bag. They don't know if you are cooperating or if you are just a confused citizen." She stood up and paced the small room, her mind working furiously. "We need to buy time. We need to make them panic. When people panic, they make mistakes. They get sloppy on the phone. They meet in person instead of using encrypted apps. How do we make them panic?" Tessa stopped pacing and looked at me. Her expression was hard, calculating. "We disappear you," she said. "What?" "We stage it. We make it look like you never made it into the station. We make it look like you got spooked and ran. Or better yet, we make it look like someone else got to you first." "I don't understand." "If they think you are in custody, they will lawyer up and shut down. They will scrub the servers and kill the evidence. But if they think you are out there, running scared with the key to their freedom in your pocket, they will come out of their holes to hunt you down." "You want to use me as bait," I said flatly. "I want to use you as a ghost," Tessa corrected. "We are going to put out a bolo be on the lookout for a missing person, Kendall Graham, suspected mental health crisis, last seen abandoning her vehicle." She grabbed her phone. "We are going to dump your car in a swamp 5 miles from here. We are going to put you in a safe house that doesn't exist on any map, and then we are going to watch the rats start to eat each other." She paused, her hand on the doorknob. "But you have to trust me. Completely. No calls to Mason. No calls to Mom. If you reach out, you die. Do you understand?" I thought of Mason's face in the window, the brother who had always hidden behind me, the brother who was now trapped in a house with our parents and a hired guard. "I understand," I said. "Let's do it." The safe house was not a house. It was a nondescript apartment in a sprawling complex on the western edge of the county. The kind of place where corporate consultants stayed for a month and then vanished. The walls were beige, the furniture was beige, and the air smelled faintly of lemon industrial cleaner and dust. The blinds were drawn tight, sealing us into a bubble of artificial light. I sat on a stiff leather sofa, my body rigid, staring at the bank of monitors Tessa had set up on the dining table. It felt like I was watching a twisted reality television show. Only the set was my childhood home, and the actors were the people who had given me life. "Drink this," Tessa said, placing a mug of tea beside me. "You have been staring at that screen for 4 hours. You need to blink." "I can't," I said, my voice raspy. "I feel like if I look away, they will do something to him." On the center monitor, a live feed from a neighbor's security camera, hijacked by Tessa's tech team, showed the front porch of my parents' house. It was late afternoon. The shadows of the oak trees were lengthening across the lawn. My mother, Diane, was standing at the door. She was talking to Mrs. Gable, the neighbor who had delivered the backpack to me just this morning. I leaned in, adjusting the volume on the headset I wore. The audio was tinny, picked up by a directional microphone planted in the flower bed. "We just don't know," Mom was saying, pressing a tissue to her nose. Her shoulders shook with what looked like genuine sobs. "She went to the hospital to see Mason, but she never checked in. She isn't answering her phone. We are terrified. Linda, absolutely terrified." "Oh, Diane," Mrs. Gable cooed, reaching out to touch my mother's arm. "Do you want me to bring over a casserole or call the pastor?" "Please," Mom wept. "Pray for us. We just want our children home." I ripped the headset off, letting it clatter onto the table. "She is unbelievable. Look at her. She is playing the grieving mother while she knows exactly why I'm not answering." "She is protecting the narrative," Tessa said calmly, not looking up from her laptop where she was monitoring police frequencies. "If she acts suspicious, the neighbors talk. If the neighbors talk, the local police get curious. She needs everyone to believe you are the variable, not her." "It makes me sick," I whispered. "Watch," Tessa commanded, pointing to the left monitor. This feed was from inside the house. Tessa hadn't explained exactly how she got a camera into the living room, and I hadn't asked. The angle was high, likely from a smoke detector or a motion sensor. Mason walked into the frame. My heart squeezed. He looked awful. His hair was messy, and he was wearing the same t-shirt he had on in the photos I had seen earlier. He was pacing back and forth, holding a stack of papers. "I am going out," Mason said. His voice was muffled but audible. "I printed these out on the inkjet. I am going to put them up at the gas stations along the highway." He held up a piece of paper. Even in the grainy black and white footage, I could see my own face. He had made a missing flyer for me. My eyes filled with tears. He didn't know. He truly thought I had vanished into thin air. "No, you are not," my father's voice boomed. Russell walked into the shot. He didn't look like the charming salesman today. He looked haggard, his shirt unbuttoned at the collar. "Dad, I can't just sit here," Mason yelled, waving the flyer. "Kendall is gone. She was coming to see me because you guys told her I was dying, and now she's gone. This is my fault. I have to go look for her." Russell grabbed Mason's arm. It wasn't a gentle hold. It was a restraint. "You are not going anywhere," Russell snapped. "You are sick. You are recovering." "I am not sick," Mason shouted, trying to wrench his arm free. "There was no accident. You guys made that up. Why won't you tell me why?" "It is complicated, Mason." Mom's voice drifted in as she entered from the front door, her public grief mask instantly replaced by a look of steel. "Sit down. You are making a scene." "I am going to the police," Mason threatened. "The police are the problem," Russell shouted. The room went silent. My father looked around, as if realizing he had said too loud. He lowered his voice, his posture slumping. "Mason, listen to me. The police are harassing us. If you go out there, they will arrest you. They will say you were involved in financial improprieties. We are keeping you inside to protect you. Bullshit, Mason muttered, but he stopped fighting. He slumped onto the sofa, putting his head in his hands. I stood up, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. I have to go get him. They are gaslighting him. They are making him think he's a criminal. Tessa was out of her seat in a flash, blocking my path to the door. She was smaller than me, but she moved with the density of a concrete barrier. Sit down, Kendall. He is scared. Look at him. If you go there, Tessa said, her voice hard and flat. The surveillance ends, the leverage ends, and the people watching that house, the ones in the gray trucks, will see you. Do you think they will let you walk Mason out to your car? They will grab both of you, and this time, there won't be a record of it. So I just watch, I demanded, gesturing at the screens. I just watch them destroy his mind. Yes, Tessa said. You watch, and you wait for them to make a mistake. Look at the time. The sun is going down. That is when the real work starts. I sat back down, hating her, hating myself, hating the beige walls. Night fell. The feed switched to infrared night vision, turning my parents' living room into a ghostly landscape of greens and grays. The house was quiet, but it wasn't peaceful. On the dining room table, Russell had spread out a chaotic pile of papers. I watched as he counted cash, thick stacks of bills that he pulled from a shoebox. He wasn't counting with joy. He was counting with desperation. His lips moving silently, his fingers trembling. It wasn't enough. I could tell by the way he slammed his hand on the table after finishing a stack. In the kitchen, Mom was on her laptop. Tessa tapped a few keys on her own computer. I am mirroring her traffic, Tessa said. She is using a VPN, but a cheap one, easy to bypass. What is she searching for? I asked. Defense attorneys specializing in federal racketeering, Tessa read aloud. Non-extradition countries, and how to magnetize a hard drive to wipe data. She wants to destroy it, I said. If I bring it back, she is going to destroy it. She is panicking, Tessa corrected. She realizes that even if she gets the bag back, the heat is already on. She is looking for an exit strategy. Tessa pulled up a file on her screen and turned it toward me. While you were watching the house, I pulled your mother's phone records from the last 6 months. Look at this. She pointed to a recurring number. It appeared dozens of times, late nights, early mornings. Who is that? The number is a burner, Tessa said. Untraceable. But look at the location data. Every time she calls this number, the phone on the other end pings off a tower in downtown Bristol, specifically, the tower directly above the Metro precinct. She knows a cop, I said. She doesn't just know a cop, Tessa said. She is being handled by one. Someone on the inside gave her the instructions. Someone told her how to pack that bag. Suddenly, the audio on the kitchen feed spiked. We both looked back at the monitors. Russell had walked into the kitchen. He stood in the doorway, watching Mom type. Diane, he said. His voice was heavy, defeated. We have to stop. Mom didn't look up. Stop what? Russell, stop breathing. We can't find her, Russell said. Kendall is gone. Maybe she just ran. Maybe she opened it, got scared, and threw it in a river. We should just leave. We take Mason and we drive. And go where? Mom snapped, spinning around on her stool. Her face was contorted in the green light of the camera. You think he will just let us leave? You think the organization just writes off a loss like that? She is our daughter, Russell shouted. I didn't sign up to hunt down my own daughter. You signed up when you took the money, Mom hissed. You signed up when you lost the house fund on that stupid crypto scheme and went to them for a loan. Do not get a conscience now. Russell, it is too late. We could call her, Russell pleaded. Tell her to just bring it to a drop. No questions asked. We let her go. No, Mom said. Her voice dropped to a terrifying whisper. We have to get it back before she opens it. If she sees what is on that drive, if she sees the signatures, she won't protect us. Kendall is righteous. She has always been Miss Perfect. She will turn us in without blinking. She is family, Russell said weakly. She is a liability, Mom retorted. We get the bag, we wipe it, then we deal with her. I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. She is a liability. My mother. The woman who had taught me to tie my shoes, who had sat in the front row of my college graduation, had just debated my disposal like I was a piece of incriminating paperwork. She hates me, I whispered. She actually hates me. She fears you, Tessa said softly. There is a difference. Fear makes people do terrible things. On the screen, the swinging door of the kitchen pushed open. Mason stood there. He had heard. He must have heard. He was standing in his socks, looking from Mom to Dad with an expression of pure horror. "What bag?" Mason asked. The silence in the kitchen was absolute. "Mason, honey," Mom started, her voice shifting instantly back to the soothing, maternal tone. It was jarring to watch the switch flip. "Go back to bed. This is grown-up talk." "Stop lying to me," Mason screamed. He slammed his hand against the wall. "I heard you. You said you have to get the bag back before she opens it. You said she is a liability. Are you trying to hurt Kendall?" "No." Russell stepped forward, hands raised. "Mason, no. We are trying to save her. She took something she shouldn't have. Dangerous people are looking for it. We just want to get it back so she is safe." "What is it?" Mason demanded. "Is it drugs? Did you make her a mule?" "It is not drugs," Mom said. Standing up, she walked toward him, not with comfort, but with menace. She crowded his personal space, forcing him to step back. "It is none of your business. You are alive because we did what we had to do. You have a roof over your head because of us. Do not question me." "I am calling her," Mason said, reaching into his pocket for his phone. "Give me the phone," Mom commanded. "No," Russell lunged. It happened fast. My father, the man who used to play catch in the yard, tackled his son into the kitchen island. The fruit bowl shattered. Mason hit the floor hard. "No," I screamed at the monitor. Jumping to my feet, I reached for the door handle. "I am going. Get out of my way. Tessa, he is hurting him." Tessa slammed her hand against the door, holding it shut. "Kendall, stop. Look. Let me go." "Look at the screen," Tessa yelled. I turned back, chest heaving. Russell had Mason pinned to the floor. He wasn't hitting him, but he was holding his wrists. Mom was standing over them, breathing hard. She reached down and plucked the phone from Mason's hand. "I am doing this for you." Mom spat at Mason. "You are too stupid to understand." She walked away from them, leaving Mason sobbing on the linoleum, pinned by his own father. She walked to the counter where her own phone was charging. A notification light blinked on the screen. Tessa typed furiously on her laptop. "She just got a text. I am intercepting it now." On the monitor, Mom picked up her phone. She read the message. Her face went slack. The anger drained out, replaced by pure, unadulterated fear. She dropped the phone on the counter as if it had burned her. "What does it say?" I asked, trembling. Tessa hit a key, and the text message appeared on our main screen, overlaid across the image of my broken family. From unknown ID message. L17 is still active. The tracker shows the vehicle stopped near Madison. You are losing control. Diane, do not let your daughter open that file. If she sees the ledger, we cannot protect you anymore. They are watching, Tessa said. The people above your mother. They know the bag hasn't been destroyed. I looked at Mom on the screen. She was staring at the dark window, terrified of what was out there in the dark. "She is going to break," I said. "She is going to give me up to save herself." "Yes," Tessa said. "So we have to make sure that when she breaks, she falls in the direction we want." The silence in the safe house was broken only by the hum of the hard drives Tessa had running in parallel on the dining table. I stood by the window, peering through the slat of the blinds at the empty parking lot below. Every pair of headlights that swept across the asphalt made my muscles tense, waiting for the gray truck, or worse, a squad car. "I found it," Tessa said. Her voice was devoid of triumph, heavy instead with a grim confirmation. I turned from the window. "Found what the mole." "The location," Tessa said. She spun her laptop around so I could see the screen. It displayed a scanned blueprint, the paper yellowed and old, titled Municipal Evidence Storage, Annex B. "You said the key was engraved with L17. I ran a cross-reference on every locker system used by the county and state in the last 20 years. Current systems use digital keypads. The system before that used 4-digit master keys." She pointed to a grid of small squares on the blueprint. "This is the old annex. It was shut down 5 years ago after a flood damaged the foundation. But look here. Row L. Locker 17. It's an abandoned warehouse," I asked. "It is supposed to be," Tessa corrected. "But according to the property records, the lease was retained by the city under a discretionary fund managed by the Vice Squad. It isn't a warehouse. Kendall, It is a dead drop. She tapped the screen, zooming in on the schematic. 3 years ago, a senior investigator named Miller started asking questions about why the city was paying rent on a condemned building. 2 weeks later, Miller was transferred to a desk job in the boondocks for conduct unbecoming. The file on Annex B was sealed. That key in your backpack doesn't just open a locker, it opens the private vault of the people running this town. I stared at the blueprint. So the hard drive is the map, and the key opens the treasure chest. And your parents just handed you the keys to the kingdom, Tessa muttered. Or the keys to the cemetery. Suddenly, a harsh, jagged ringtone cut through the room. It wasn't my phone, which was powered down and wrapped in foil in the microwave, and it wasn't Tessa's official bureau phone. It was a small, black burner phone sitting on the far edge of the table. Tessa had set it up an hour ago, linking it to a cloned SIM card that mimicked my old number. Just in case someone tried to bypass the main networks, Tessa lunged for it. She didn't answer immediately. She plugged a cable into the bottom, linking it to her laptop. "Tracing," she whispered, her fingers flying across the keyboard. "Okay, signal is bouncing, but it is local. It is coming from a residential node." She nodded at me. "Answer it. Put it on speaker. Do not say where you are." I picked up the phone. My hand felt like it belonged to someone else. "Hello." "Kendall." The voice was a whisper, breathless and terrified. "Mason." I gasped. "Mason. Oh my God. Are you okay?" "Listen to me," he hissed. The background noise sounded like the hum of a closet or a bathroom fan. "I don't have much time. Mom is in the garage and Dad is arguing with the guy on the porch. Kendall, where are you?" "I am safe," I said, looking at Tessa. She held up a hand, warning me to stop there. "I am safe, Mason, but I know about the lie. I know about the accident. Why did they do this?" "They didn't have a choice," Mason said, his voice cracking. "But you have to listen. Do not give them the backpack. Whatever you do not give it back to them." "Mason, I know about the evidence," I said. "I know about the hard drive." "You don't know where it came from," he whispered. "Kendall, it's mine." The room seemed to tilt. "What? It is mine," he repeated. "The drive. The data. I stole it." I looked at Tessa. Her eyes widened slightly. This was the variable we hadn't accounted for. "Talk to me, Mason," I said, my voice steadying. "How did you get it?" 6 months ago," Mason rushed on, the words tumbling out. "I was doing that contract work for the county. Remember updating the server infrastructure for the clerk's office? I was migrating old files. I found a directory that was encrypted but hidden badly. It was like someone had just dragged and dropped it into a system folder hoping no one would notice." "What was in it?" "Video files," Mason said. "Body cam footage that was supposed to be deleted, recordings of interrogations that never made it to court, and a spreadsheet, a ledger of payments. Kendall, I saw names, the chief, the district attorney, and Dad." My stomach dropped. "Dad was on the list." "Dad wasn't getting paid," Mason said bitterly. "Dad was paying. He was laundering money for them through those shell companies he calls ventures. I saw his signature on the intake forms." "Oh, Dad," I whispered. "I panicked," Mason said. "I knew if I just left it, they would see my login on the access logs. So I copied it. I copied everything onto an encrypted drive, and I put it on a timer. If I didn't log in every 48 hours, it would auto-email the decryption key to the FBI Cyber Division." "The insurance policy," Tessa mouthed. "I hid the drive in my emergency backpack," Mason continued. "I thought I was safe. I thought I had leverage. But Dad, he found the external drive receipt in my trash. He confronted me 2 days ago. He broke down. He told me the people he works for were going to kill us all if I didn't return the data. So they packed the bag," I realized aloud. "They made a deal," Mason sobbed. Dad called his handler. "He told them I had the data, but I was willing to return it if they wiped our debt. They agreed, but they said I couldn't be the one to bring it. I was compromised. They needed a mule, someone clean, someone who wouldn't look inside." "Me," I said. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. "They chose me. I tried to stop them. Kendall, I swear I told them you weren't stupid, that you would check the bag. But Dad said—" Mason stopped. "What did he say?" "Mason?" "He said, Kendall is a soldier. She has been cleaning up your messes since you were 6 years old. She won't ask questions. She will just be happy to be the hero." I closed my eyes. Tears leaked out, hot and stinging. It was the ultimate weaponization of my love, my entire life, my identity as the responsible sister, the protector, the shield. It was all just a behavioral profile to them, a weakness to be exploited. They packed my backpack, Mason said. They put the drive inside, put the clothes on top to make it look real, and called you with the fake accident story. They knew you would run. They knew you would drive fast. And the gray truck? They didn't trust you completely, Mason said. They sent an escort. The deal was, you drop the bag at a specific location in Bristol, and the debt is cleared. But now, everything is gone. The guy on the porch, he says the deal is off. Mason, who is the guy on the porch? Tessa asked, leaning toward the phone. I don't know his name, Mason whispered. But he has a gun. I saw it when he bent down to tie his shoe. He is waiting for a call. Kendall, you have to run. Don't come back here. Just run. I am not leaving you, I said fiercely. I'm going to fix this. You can't fix this. Mason's voice rose to a panic. Wait, I hear a car. Mason, a car just pulled up. It's not the gray truck. It's a sedan. Black, tinted windows. I looked at the surveillance monitors. There was a 10-second delay on the feed. Tessa, check the monitors, I yelled. On the screen, a sleek black sedan rolled silently to the curb in front of my parents' house. It didn't look like a police car. It looked like a hearse designed for the living. 2 men got out. They were wearing suits, but not the cheap polyester suits of detectives. These were expensive, tailored. They moved with a fluid, terrifying confidence. Mason, get out of there, I screamed into the phone. Lock the door. They are coming to the door, Mason whispered. Dad is opening it. Oh God, Dad is letting them in. On the monitor, I saw my father open the front door. He didn't look relieved. He looked like a man walking to the gallows. He stepped aside, and the 2 men walked into the house. The feed from the living room camera showed them entering. My mother stood up from the sofa, her hands trembling over her mouth. One of the men said something to Russell. Russell nodded, his head hanging low. He pointed toward the kitchen, toward where Mason was hiding. Mason, run, I shouted. They are coming, Mason said. His voice was suddenly very calm. Kendall, the password for the drive is your birthday. It was always your birthday. There was a crash on the other end of the line, the sound of a door being kicked open. Get off the phone, a deep voice barked. Run, Kendall, Mason screamed. Then there was a scuffle, the sound of plastic cracking, and the line went dead. Mason, I yelled at the silent phone. Mason, I looked at the monitor. The 2 men were dragging Mason out of the kitchen. He wasn't fighting. He looked limp, perhaps stunned or sedated. They didn't even look at my parents. They marched Mason out the front door, down the walkway, and shoved him into the back of the black sedan. My father stood in the doorway, watching. He didn't move. He didn't scream. He just watched them take his son. The sedan pulled away, disappearing down the street. I stood there, gripping the burner phone until the plastic creaked. The silence in the safe house was suffocating. Tessa typed a final command and closed her laptop. She looked at me, and for the first time, her face wasn't that of a cool agent. It was the face of someone who realized the war had just started. That wasn't an arrest, Tessa said quietly. That was a rendition. They took him, I said. My voice sounded strange to my own ears, cold, detached, like metal grinding on stone. They gave him up, again. The mole knows the bag is compromised, Tessa said. They know you haven't delivered it. They are shifting tactics. They aren't waiting for you to bring the leverage anymore. They are taking the creator of the leverage. She stood up and walked over to me, placing her hands on my shoulders. She forced me to look at her. Kendall, listen to me closely. 10 minutes ago, your brother was bait. He was a lure to get you to come home. She looked at the empty street on the monitor where the black sedan had vanished. Now, he is a hostage. They are going to take him to a secondary location. They are going to interrogate him to find out if he made copies, and then they are going to use him to force you to bring that backpack to them. I will kill them, I said. It wasn't a threat. It was a statement of fact, as simple as stating the weather. I will kill them all. No, Tessa said sharply. You won't, because if you act out of anger, you die. And Mason dies, you are going to use the one thing they don't think you have. What is that? The truth, Tessa said. Mason gave you the password. We can open the drive. We don't just have the leverage anymore. Kendall, we have the nuclear option. She grabbed the keys to the rental car she had secured earlier. Pack your things. We are leaving. We can't stay here. If they have Mason, they might be able to get the location of this safe house out of him within the hour. I looked one last time at the monitor, at my father standing like a statue in the doorway of the house that was no longer a home. He told them, I whispered. He told them Mason was in the kitchen. Yes, Tessa said. He did. I turned away from the screen. The compliance officer was gone. The sister was gone. What was left was something much harder, forged in the fire of absolute betrayal. Let's open the drive, I said, and then let's burn their whole world down. The silence in the car was heavy, broken only by the rhythmic thrum of tires on wet asphalt. We had abandoned the safe house 20 minutes after Mason was taken, swapping the rental sedan for a nondescript utility van that smelled of stale cigarettes and copper wire. Tessa drove with a terrifying focus, her eyes darting between the road and the encrypted tablet mounted on the dashboard. We were fighting a war on two fronts now. Status report, Tessa barked into her headset. Team Alpha has visual on the black sedan. A voice crackled through the speakers. They are heading north on Highway 25, maintaining a 3-mile gap to avoid detection. And the parents, Tessa asked. Team Bravo has the house. Subjects Russell and Diane are moving. They just exited the garage in their personal vehicle. They are agitated, driving erratic. I sat in the passenger seat, my knees pulled up to my chest. For the last hour, a loop had been playing in my head, a torture device of my own making. If I hadn't stopped, if I had just pushed through the thirst at Cranberry Gap, I would have arrived in Bristol 2 hours ago. I would have delivered the backpack to the drop point. Mason would still be safe in his room. Stop it, Tessa said. She hadn't looked at me, but she read the room like a profiler. If I hadn't stopped for water, I whispered, Mason wouldn't be in that car. If you hadn't stopped for water, Tessa corrected, her voice sharp as a whip crack. You would have handed that drive to the man in the gray truck, and you know what happens to a mule once the package is delivered? They get erased. You would be a missing persons report right now, and Mason would still be a hostage because he is the one who made the copies. That gas station didn't ruin your life, Kendall. It saved it. I looked at my hands. She was right. The moment I turned the key in the ignition this morning, the trap was already sprung. The stop at the gas station was the only variable they hadn't programmed into the simulation. We need to turn the table, Tessa said, merging onto the interstate. Right now, they think they have the upper hand. They have Mason. They think you are running scared. We need to make them believe you are not just a loose end. We need them to believe you are a threat. How? We use the lie against them. You are going to send a message to your mother. You are going to tell her you opened the file, and you are going to tell her you made copies. But I haven't made copies yet, I said. We haven't even cracked the encryption. They don't know that, Tessa said. Fear is more useful than facts. If they think the data is about to go wide to the press, to the feds, they will panic. And when they panic, they will run to their handler for help. We need to see who comes out of the shadows to meet them. I picked up the burner phone. My thumb hovered over the screen. I typed the message Tessa dictated, my fingers trembling. I opened L17. I saw the ledger. I have 3 copies on cloud servers set to auto-publish in 2 hours. Call off your dogs, or I burn the whole network down. I hit send. Now, Tessa said, switching the tablet display to the tracking beacon she had slapped on my parents' car earlier that day. We watched the rats scurry. It took less than 3 minutes. On the map, the dot representing my parents' car, which had been aimlessly circling a residential neighborhood, suddenly pulled a U-turn. They accelerated. They are moving, Tessa said, heading toward the commercial district, Eastside Parkway. Where are they going? There is a 24-hour supercenter plaza there, Tessa noted. Big parking lot, lots of exits, classic drop spot. Tessa spun the wheel, taking the exit ramp too fast. The van groaned, but held the road. We were 10 minutes away. By the time we pulled into the sprawling, sodium-lit parking lot of the supercenter, the rain had started to fall harder. It was a miserable night, the kind that made everything look slick and dangerous. Tessa parked the van 3 rows back, sandwiched between a delivery truck and a dumpster. We had a direct line of sight to the far corner of the lot, away from the store entrance. My parents' silver sedan was there. The engine was running. Put these on, Tessa said, handing me a pair of heavy headphones. She adjusted a directional microphone aimed through the crack in our window. The rain is going to mess with the audio, but we should get the gist. I put the headphones on. The sound of the rain was amplified to a roar, but then Tessa tweaked the frequency, and voices cut through the static. My parents were standing outside their car. Mom was wearing a raincoat, clutching her purse to her chest. Dad was pacing, wiping water from his forehead. "He said he was coming," Russell's voice came through, tinny and strained. "Why is he late?" "We don't have time, Diane." "Stop pacing," Mom hissed. "You look guilty." "We are guilty," Russell shouted, then lowered his voice. "She said she has copies. 3 copies. If she releases that ledger, it is over. Prison is the best-case scenario." "She is bluffing," Mom said, though her voice lacked conviction. "Kendall doesn't know how to use cloud servers. She barely knows how to use her smart TV." "She is a compliance officer," Russell argued. "She knows how to document things. We underestimated her. We should have never involved her." "We didn't have a choice," Mom snapped. Headlights swept across them. A large, black SUV pulled into the spot facing them. It was aggressive, taking up 2 spaces. The headlights died. A man stepped out. I gasped, the sound loud in the enclosed van. Tessa looked at me. "You know him." "Yes," I whispered, my blood turning to ice. "That is Commander Shelby. Frank Shelby. He was a giant of a man, the local precinct commander for the entire district. He was the man who organized the policeman's ball. He was the man who had sat at our dining room table for Thanksgiving dinner 4 years ago, laughing and eating my mother's pecan pie. He was Uncle Frank to half the kids in the neighborhood. Now, he stood in the rain, looking at my parents with the cold indifference of an executioner. "Frank," my father said, stepping forward with his hands out. "Thank God. Look, we have a situation." "I know," Shelby said. His voice was deep, rumbling through the microphone. "The tracker shows the bag is still in the wind, and now I hear your daughter is making threats." "She is confused," Mom said quickly, stepping between Russell and Shelby. "She is just scared. Frank, we can talk her down. We just need a little more time. But you have to tell your men to let Mason go. If she thinks Mason is hurt, she will do something rash." "Mason is collateral," Shelby said. "He stole from us. He is lucky he is breathing." "We had a deal," Russell pleaded. "We return the drive. The debt is wiped. No one gets hurt." "The deal changed when you lost the bag," Shelby said. "And now she claims she has opened it. Did she?" "I don't know," Mom admitted. "She sent a text. She says she has copies." Shelby laughed, a cruel, short bark. "If she had copies, she would have gone to the feds already. She is stalling. She is trying to buy time for her brother." He stepped closer to my mother. He towered over her. "Here is the new deal. Diane, you get her on the phone. You tell her whatever you need to tell her to get her to bring that bag to me, tonight. And if she won't come," Mom asked. Her voice trembled. "Then we find her," Shelby said, "and we resolve the issue." "She is my daughter, Frank," Russell said weakly. "She is a loose end," Shelby corrected. "And right now, she is the only thing standing between you and a federal indictment for money laundering, so you need to decide who you want to save, the boy or the girl. You can't keep both." I held my breath. I wanted my mother to slap him. I wanted my father to punch him. I wanted them to scream that they would burn in hell before they sacrificed their children. Mom looked down at the wet pavement. She adjusted her grip on her purse. She looked like she was calculating a grocery bill. "If we get the bag back," Mom said, her voice steady and low, "and if we bring it to you, can you guarantee Mason comes home?" "If the bag is intact," Shelby said. "Yes." "And Kendall?" Russell asked. Mom turned to look at Dad. Her eyes were dead. There was no light in them, no maternal warmth, just the cold, hard calculation of survival. "Russell," she said, "we can't save everyone." She turned back to Shelby. "My daughter just needs to be silent." Mom said, "That is all. If she is silent, we are fine. We can handle that part. You just get the boy back to us." The silence in the van was absolute. I felt like I had been hollowed out with a scoop. She needs to be silent. It was a euphemism, a soft way of authorizing my removal. She wasn't asking for me to be killed explicitly, but she was giving them permission to do whatever was necessary to silence me. "Okay," Shelby said. "Get her to the old mill on Route 9, midnight. We will be waiting." Shelby got back in his SUV and drove away. My parents stood in the rain for a moment longer, then got back in their silver sedan. I took the headphones off. My hands were numb. "We have it," Tessa said. She was tapping furiously on her laptop. "We have the audio. That is conspiracy to commit obstruction of justice, racketeering, and accessory to kidnapping. We can nail Shelby. We can nail your parents. It's not enough, I said. My voice was flat. Shelby will claim he was conducting an undercover operation. My parents will claim they were under duress. We need the physical evidence. We need the drive. We have the drive, Tessa said. But we are missing the link. We need to catch them in the act of the exchange. We need to be at the mill. No, I said. The mill is a kill box. If we go there, we die. Tessa's phone buzzed. She looked at it, and her expression shifted from determination to alarm. It is Team Alpha, she said. They tracked the black sedan. They found Mason. Where? A short-term rental property near the county line, isolated. It belongs to a shell company linked to Shelby's brother-in-law. Let's go, I said, reaching for the door handle. We get Mason, then we burn Shelby. Wait, Tessa said. She held up a hand. She was looking at the text message again, frowning. What is it? Team Alpha just sent the coordinates, she said slowly. But I haven't authorized the raid yet, and look at this. She turned the screen to me. It was a message from the central dispatch log, which she had been mirroring. Dispatch to all units, stand down, vicinity County Line Road. SWAT training exercise in progress. Someone just cleared the board, Tessa whispered. Someone told the local patrols to stay away from that house, so Shelby's men can work undisturbed. Shelby did it, I said. Shelby doesn't have the clearance to override county dispatch, Tessa said. She looked at me, and I saw real fear in her eyes for the first time. Only the State Bureau can authorize a blackout like that. But you are the State Bureau, I said. Exactly, Tessa said. Which means the call came from inside my office. It came from the support team I have been feeding intel to for the last 3 hours. She reached out and ripped the dashboard camera off its mount, severing the wire. She grabbed her bureau-issued phone and powered it down. We are leaking, she said. Someone on my team is feeding Shelby our position. That is why he knew about the copies before your mother even told him. He knew we were listening. So they know we are here, I asked, looking out at the dark parking lot. They know we are close, Tessa said. From now on, we are dark. No backup, no uniforms, no radio. It is just you and me. And Mason, I added. If he is still alive, Tessa said grimly. She put the van in gear. We have 1 hour before Shelby expects you at the mill. We are going to use that hour to take back the only leverage we have left. We are going to the house, I said. We are going to get my brother. We are not just going to get him, Tessa said, her eyes hard. We are going to make sure that when Shelby shows up at the mill, he realizes he is the one who walked into a trap. She slammed her foot on the gas. The van surged forward, leaving the supercenter parking lot and the ghosts of my parents behind in the rain. The glow of the laptop screen was the only light in the cramped cabin of the utility van. Outside, the rain had settled into a steady rhythmic drumming against the metal roof, sealing us into a capsule of high-voltage tension. We were parked in the shadow of a derelict textile factory, miles away from the supercenter, operating off a secure hotspot that Tessa had routed through 3 different overseas servers. Are you sure you want to see this? Tessa asked. Her hand hovered over the trackpad. Once you see the specifics, Kendall, you can't unsee them. It stops being a theory and starts being evidence. Open it, I said. My voice was calm, a terrifying, hollow kind of calm that I had never felt before. I am done with theories. I need to know the scope of the liability. Tessa clicked the file. It was the decryption of the drive Mason had stolen. It wasn't just a list of dirty cops. It was a ledger of a shadow economy running parallel to the legitimate one in our county. There were columns for seizure assets, columns for distribution, and columns for sanitation fees. Scroll down, I commanded. Search for the name Graham. Tessa typed it in. The screen jumped to a PDF attachment, a scanned document dated 18 months ago. It was a standard transfer of custody form, the kind used to move evidence from a precinct to long-term storage. But the items listed weren't drugs or guns. They were bundles of cash. $200,000, and at the bottom, in the field marked Receiving Officer, was a signature I knew better than my own. It was a loops and dashes scrawl that I had seen on report cards, permission slips, and birthday checks for 34 years. Russell Graham. He didn't just owe them money, I whispered, the air leaving my lungs. He was on the payroll. He was the washing machine, Tessa said, analyzing the document. Look at the title under his name. Consultant. They were using his shell companies to intake the cash, filter it through legitimate business expenses, and return it to Shelby's crew as clean consulting fees. Your father wasn't a victim of a bad loan. Kendall, he was a partner. My mind flashed back to a lunch with my father 3 weeks ago. He had been pushy, almost aggressive, about me signing a power of attorney form. It's just for convenience. Kenny, he had said, sliding the paper across the tablecloth. In case Mom and I get stuck overseas, we need someone to sign checks. I felt a wave of nausea so violent I had to grip the dashboard. The power of attorney, I choked out. He wanted me to sign it so he could put my name on the accounts. He was going to move the dirty money into accounts under my name. If the feds came knocking, Tessa finished for me, Russell would be the confused elderly victim, and you, the compliance officer with the financial know-how, would look like the mastermind embezzling from her own parents. They hadn't just planned to use me as a mule for the backpack. They had been planning to frame me for the entire operation for months. I was their exit strategy. They were going to send me to prison for 20 years, I said, to save themselves. I looked at Tessa. The fear I had felt for the last 8 hours evaporated. In its place, a cold, crystalline rage formed. It was sharp and heavy. I want a lawyer, I said. Not a defense attorney. I want a federal prosecutor. I want to cut a deal. Tessa nodded. She pulled a satellite phone from her emergency kit. I know a U.S. attorney in the Capitol. She is clean. She has been trying to get Shelby for 5 years, but never had the smoking gun. Get her on the line. Now. 10 minutes later, I was speaking to Assistant U.S. Attorney Miriam Voss via an encrypted channel. Her voice was crisp, professional, and skeptical. Ms. Graham, Voss said. Agent Harrow tells me you are in possession of the Annex B files. That is a significant claim. I have the files, I said, my voice dropping into my professional register. I was back in the boardroom. I have the ledger, the video files, and the chain of signature that implicates Commander Shelby, and at least 6 other officers. I also have proof of a civilian money laundering arm involving Russell and Diane Graham. We are listening, Voss said. I am offering full cooperation. I continued. I will testify. I will walk you through the financial structuring. I will authenticate the documents, but I have conditions. We don't usually do conditions before surrender, Voss countered. You don't usually have a witness holding the keys to a citywide conspiracy who is currently being hunted by the local police. I snapped. Here are my terms. 1, absolute physical protection for my brother, Mason Graham. He is currently being held at a secondary location. Retrieving him alive is the priority. 2, no immunity for Russell or Diane Graham. There was a silence on the line. Usually, family members tried to negotiate leniency for each other. No immunity? Voss asked. None, I said. They are not victims. They are co-conspirators who orchestrated the kidnapping of their own son and the attempted framing of their daughter. I want them prosecuted to the full extent of the federal statutes. I want their assets seized. I want them left with nothing. Understood, Voss said. I could hear the surprise in her voice, but also the respect. If the intel is good, we accept. We are mobilizing a tactical team from the Capitol now, but we are 2 hours out. You need to keep Shelby occupied until we can get boots on the ground. We will, Tessa said, taking the phone back. We are going to set a trap. We hung up. Tessa looked at me. We need to get Shelby and your parents to the same place at the same time, and we need to make sure they bring Mason. The gala? I said. What? The Community Safety Gala, I explained. I saw the flyer on Shelby's dashboard when he met my parents. It is tonight, at the convention center downtown. It is the perfect cover. Thousands of people, high security, loud music. Shelby has to be there. He is the keynote speaker. If he is at the gala, he isn't at the mill waiting for you, Tessa reasoned. We need to make him think the exchange is happening there. I will make him think he has no choice, I said. I picked up the burner phone again. I typed a message. This time, it wasn't a vague threat. It was a precise, surgical strike aimed at the one weak point in the alliance. My mother's self-preservation instinct. To Diane Graham, message. I know what Dad signed. I know about the power of attorney scheme. I have the L17 drive, and I have already uploaded the folder named Russell Receipts to a dead man's switch. If I don't enter a code in 60 minutes, it goes to the FBI. I sent it. Now, I said to Tessa, open the feed. We watched the tablet. My parents were back in their car, parked in a dark lot, arguing. The interior light was on. Mom's phone buzzed. She picked it up. I watched her face closely. I expected fear. I expected tears. But what I saw was chilling. As she read my text, her face went slack. Then, her eyes narrowed. The trembling stopped. She sat up straighter. She looked at Russell, who was holding his head in his hands. "She knows," Mom said. Her lips moved clearly enough for us to read, even without the audio. "What?" Russell asked. "She knows about the signature. She isn't guessing. Russell, she has the document." Mom looked out the window, staring into the darkness. Then she turned back to my father. "Do you want to go to jail, Russell?" she asked. "No, Diane, of course not." "Then we have to stop treating her like our daughter," Mom said. "She is the enemy witness. We have to give Shelby what he wants. We have to give him the girl to get the boy back. Mason is quiet. Mason we can control. Kendall is the problem." "My God," Tessa whispered next to me. "She just authorized the hit." "She didn't just authorize it," I said, my voice shaking slightly despite my anger. "She is rationalizing it. She is trading one child for the other because she thinks Mason is too weak to testify against her." Mom typed a reply. My burner phone buzzed. From Mom. Message. "We can fix this. Just bring the drive. We are at the gala. Shelby can clear Dad's name if we give him the original files. Please, Kendall, for the family." "For the family," I read aloud, scoffing. "She means for her—" "We have them," Tessa said. "They are going to the gala. That means Shelby will move Mason. He won't leave a hostage unattended while he is making a speech. He will want Mason close by for leverage." "Mason," I said. "We need to know where he is." As if on cue, a notification popped up on Tessa's laptop. It was a low-priority alert from a smart home monitoring system. "What is that?" "It is a door left ajar alert," Tessa said, frowning. "From a rental property on the county line, the one we suspected. Maybe the wind blew it open." "No," Tessa said, zooming in on the log. "Look at the pattern. Open, close, open, close, open, close, 3 times in 10 seconds. "Morse code?" I asked. "No, just a signal. Someone is manually triggering the sensor to create a digital noise. Someone who knows we are watching the grid." "It's Mason," I said, hope surging in my chest. "He is smart. He knows the system. He is telling us exactly where he is." "He is alive," Tessa confirmed. "And he is at the rental house. Shelby must have a skeleton crew guarding him while the main force prepares for the gala." "Let's go," I said. "The feds are 2 hours out. We can't wait that long. If they move him to the gala, it will be impossible to extract him without a firefight." Tessa started the van. We hit the house. We grabbed Mason. Then we crashed the party. We drove in silence, the rain lashing against the windshield. The plan was dangerous, bordering on suicidal. But it was the only play left on the board. We turned onto the dirt road that led to the rental property. It was dark, the trees closing in like a tunnel. Tessa killed the headlights, driving by the faint glow of the GPS. 1 mile out," Tessa whispered. "We approach on foot." She reached into the back and pulled out a tactical vest. She handed it to me. "Put this on. It won't stop a rifle round, but it helps." "Do you have a gun for me?" I asked. "No," Tessa said. "You are the witness. If you shoot someone, it complicates the prosecution. I do the shooting. You do the extracting." She checked her service weapon, racking the slide. The metallic clack-clack was the loudest sound in the world. We were half a mile from the house when Tessa's personal cell phone, the one she had turned off, vibrated. It wasn't supposed to be on. "I thought you killed that phone," I whispered. "It powered itself back on," Tessa said, her face pale. "Someone remotely rebooted it." It rang. The screen displayed a blocked number. Tessa stared at it for a second, then answered, putting it on speaker. "Harrow," she said. "Turn around," a voice said. It was distorted, digital, unrecognizable. "Who is this?" "You are walking into a kill box. Agent," the voice said. "The door ajar signal wasn't sent by the boy. It was sent by the team waiting for you. They knew you were watching the logs. There are 4 shooters in the tree line and a sniper on the roof." My blood ran cold. "Why tell me?" Tessa asked. "Because if you die tonight, Shelby wins, and I don't want Shelby to win." "Who is this?" Tessa demanded again. "Someone who read the ledger," the voice said. "Mason isn't at the house anymore. They moved him 10 minutes ago. He is in the trunk of a car heading to the convention center. If you raid that house, You hit empty air and catch a bullet. The line went dead. Tessa slammed on the brakes. The van skidded in the mud, coming to a halt in the darkness of the woods. It was a trap, I whispered. They used Mason's skills against us. They knew we would look for a tech signal. And someone just saved our lives, Tessa said, looking at the silent phone. Someone inside the leak. Or someone playing a double game, I said. Can we trust it? We don't have a choice, Tessa said, throwing the van into reverse. If Mason isn't there, we are wasting time. We have to go to the gala. It all ends at the gala. She spun the van around, tires spraying mud. Your mother made her choice, Tessa said, her eyes fixed on the road. Now we make ours. I touched the tactical vest strapped to my chest. I thought about the signature on the receipt. I thought about the text message. Yes, I said. We are going to the party, and we are bringing the receipt. The convention center was a monolith of glass and steel, rising from the rain-slicked streets of downtown. Inside, the annual Community Safety Gala was in full swing. It was a grotesque irony that made my stomach turn. The very people who had turned my life into a fugitive run were currently inside, drinking champagne and toasting to law and order. Tessa parked the van 3 blocks away in a shadowed alley. The rain was still hammering down, washing away the grime of the road, but doing nothing to cleanse the feeling of dread that coated my skin. Turn around, Tessa commanded. I spun slowly. The tactical vest was gone, replaced by a sleek, floor-length black gown Tessa had pulled from an emergency duffel in the back of the van. It fit tight, uncomfortable, but it looked expensive. She adjusted the dark wig she had forced onto my head, pinning it securely. You look like a donor, Tessa assessed, her voice clinical. You look like someone who just wrote a $10,000 check to the Policeman's Benevolent Fund. No one looks at the donors. They just look at the jewelry. I feel like a target, I said, smoothing the fabric. Do we know if Mason is inside? The anonymous tip said they were moving him to the center, Tessa said, checking her weapon before concealing it beneath a heavy shawl. If Shelby is here, Mason is close. Shelby needs the leverage within arm's reach to close the deal with your parents. He won't risk leaving Mason in a trunk outside. And the feds? Assistant U.S. Attorney Voss is airborne. Her tactical team is moving in via ground transport, but they are fighting the weather. We are the advance guard. Kendall, our job is to verify the target and stall the transaction until the cavalry knocks the door down. We move toward the service entrance. Tessa bypassed the electronic lock with a decoder tool that looked like a garage door opener. The light turned green, and we slipped into the warm, smelling of roast beef air of the catering corridors. The noise of the gala bled through the walls, a hum of conversation, clinking glass, and a jazz band playing a neutered version of a pop song. We navigated the back hallways, dodging waiters carrying trays of canapes. We found a vantage point on the mezzanine level, hiding in the shadows of a heavy velvet curtain. Below us, the ballroom was a sea of tuxedos and sequins. It didn't take long to find them. My parents were standing near the ice sculpture. My mother, Diane, was wearing her navy blue sequined dress, the one she wore to my cousin's wedding. She was holding a flute of champagne. She was smiling. I felt a physical jolt, like I had grabbed a live wire. She was laughing at something a man in a gray suit had said. Her son was a hostage. Her daughter was being hunted, and she was making polite conversation at a cocktail party. Look at them, I whispered, the venom in my voice surprising me. They look relieved. They think the nightmare is ending, Tessa said. They think they are about to trade you for their freedom. Who is the man? I asked. Standing with them was Commander Shelby. But he wasn't the alpha in the circle. He was deferring to someone else, a tall man with silver hair and the kind of tan that costs money. Tessa stiffened beside me. That is Judge Holloway, Superior Court. A judge? Not just a judge. The judge who signs off on 70% of the warrant requests for the vice squad. He is the rubber stamp. If Holloway is involved, the conspiracy doesn't just run through the police department, it runs through the courthouse. That is why they weren't afraid, I realized. They own the people who interpret the law. A waiter approached the group. He whispered something to Shelby. Shelby nodded and touched Holloway's elbow. The group my parents included began to move. They weren't heading for the exit. They were heading for the VIP suites along the east wall. They are making the deal, Tessa said. We have to get in that room. We moved fast. Descending the service stairs, the VIP suites had a separate ventilation and service corridor. Tessa led the way. moving with the silent grace of a predator. We found the door to the service pantry connecting to Suite A. Tessa picked the lock in 3 seconds. We slipped inside the small, dark pantry. A sliver of light came from under the connecting door. We could hear everything. "I don't like this, Frank." Judge Holloway's voice boomed, smooth and commanding. "Too many moving parts. You said the girl was handled." "The girl is en route," Shelby's voice replied. "She thinks she is bringing the drive to the mill. My team is waiting for her there. Once they secure the package, the problem is solved." "And the copies?" Holloway asked. "She claimed she made copies." "A bluff," my father's voice chimed in. It was weak, eager to please. "Kendall is not technical. She was trying to scare us." "I hope you are right, Russell," Holloway said, "because if one file from that drive hits the internet, I will personally ensure you die in a cell so small you can't lie down." "We just want our son," my mother said. Her voice was steady. "We did what you asked. We delivered the girl. We kept her calm. We got her to the drop." "You did," Shelby agreed. "But we need to finalize the terms. The debt is cleared. The money laundering charges are erased from the pending file. But we need insurance that if the girl disappears, you two won't suddenly develop a conscience." "We won't," Mom said quickly. "We just want to go back to our lives. We want Mason back. He is a good boy. He won't talk." "And the girl?" Holloway asked. "What is your stance on the girl?" "Diane." I pressed my ear against the wood, my heart hammering so hard I thought they would hear it through the door. This was it, the moment of truth. "Kendall is headstrong," Mom said. "She has always been righteous. She wouldn't understand. She would destroy us all to prove a point." She paused. I could hear the clink of glass being set down on a table. "I want to be debt-free," Mom said, her voice dropping to a whisper that cut through me like a razor. "And I want my son safe. If Kendall has to be removed to make that happen, then that is her choice. She shouldn't have opened the bag." Tears ran down my face, hot and fast. She had said it. She had explicitly traded my life for her comfort. "And you?" Russell Holloway asked. "Are you on board with this maternal sacrifice?" There was a silence, a long, agonizing silence. I closed my eyes, a foolish, childish part of me hoping my father would scream, hoping he would flip the table and fight for me. "Dad," I mouthed. "Please." "Just make it quick," Russell said. "Don't let her suffer." The breath left my body. The last thread connecting me to the concept of family snapped. It wasn't a loud noise. It was the quietest sound in the world. Tessa grabbed my arm, her eyes fierce. She pointed to her watch. The feds were close, but not close enough. We had the confession. Now we needed the disruption. Suddenly, the door to the suite opened. A heavy set of footsteps entered. "We have a problem," a new voice said. It sounded like one of Shelby's lieutenants. "The team at the mill just checked in. The girl never showed up. The location is cold." "What?" Shelby roared. "And we just got a ping from the internal security grid." The lieutenant continued. "Someone bypassed the lock on the service pantry. Right there." He pointed at the door we were hiding behind. "Run," Tessa hissed. She didn't wait. She kicked the pantry door open, slamming it into the face of the lieutenant. Chaos erupted. Judge Holloway screamed. My mother shrieked. Shelby reached for a weapon inside his tuxedo jacket. Tessa grabbed a silver serving platter from the pantry shelf and hurled it at Shelby, striking him in the shoulder. "Go into the crowd." I scrambled past the stunned occupants of the room. I locked eyes with my mother for a split second. She looked at me in the wig, in the dress, and her eyes went wide with recognition and horror. "Kendall," she gasped. I didn't stop. I ran out of the suite and into the main ballroom. "Security!" Shelby bellowed behind us. "Lock down the exits." Tessa grabbed my hand, pulling me into the throngs of dancers. But the room was changing. The music stopped. Bright emergency lights flooded the room as a piercing alarm began to wail. "Fire alarm!" Tessa yelled over the noise. Someone pulled it. The crowd, confused and frightened by the sudden lights and noise, began to surge toward the main doors. It was a stampede. "Stay with me," Tessa shouted. But the wave of humanity was too strong. A large man in a tuxedo slammed into me, knocking my hand from Tessa's grip. "Tessa!" I screamed. I was spun around, pushed, and shoved by panicked donors. I lost sight of her. I was alone in a sea of screaming people. A hand clamped onto my upper arm. It wasn't a gentle guide. It was a vice grip. I looked up. It was the lieutenant, the one Tessa had hit with the door. His nose was bleeding, and his eyes were murderous. "Got you," he growled. He didn't pull me toward the exit. He dragged me sideways, forcing me through a set of heavy curtains and into a maintenance corridor that ran parallel to the ballroom. "Let me go!" I screamed, clawing at his hand. I kicked at his shins, but the long dress tangled my legs. He slammed me against the concrete wall of the corridor. The air left my lungs. He pressed a forearm against my throat. "You caused a lot of trouble, lady," he spat. "Shelby said to finish it if we found you." He reached for his belt. He wasn't reaching for handcuffs. He was reaching for a knife. I scrabbled at his arm, my vision spotting with black dots. "Get off me." "Hold still," he grunted, raising the blade. Suddenly, a shadow moved at the end of the hallway. There was a dull thud, followed by the sound of boots sprinting on concrete. "Hey!" a voice shouted. The lieutenant turned his head. A fire extinguisher slammed into the side of his skull with a sickening crunch. The grip on my throat vanished. The lieutenant crumpled to the floor like a sack of wet cement. I slid down the wall, gasping for air, clutching my neck. I looked up at my savior. He was wearing a dirty t-shirt and jeans that were caked in mud. His face was bruised, one eye swollen shut, and his lip was split, but he was standing. He was holding the fire extinguisher like a weapon of war. "Mason," I wheezed. He dropped the extinguisher and fell to his knees beside me, pulling me into a hug that hurt my ribs, but felt like salvation. "I got you," he sobbed. "I got you, Kenny." "How?" I asked, pushing back to look at him. "You were a hostage. The trunk." "The team," Mason gasped, wiping blood from his mouth. "The Fed team. They intercepted the car 2 blocks from here. They pulled me out. They wanted to put me in a safe house, but I told them no. I told them I knew where the server room was. I told them I could kill the building's security so they could breach." "You pulled the alarm." "I hacked the panel," he said, a ghost of a smile touching his battered lips. "I wanted to clear the dance floor." "Kendall Mason." Tessa appeared at the end of the hall. She was flanked by 4 men in heavy tactical gear with FBI emblazoned on their vests. Assistant U.S. Attorney Miriam Voss was with them, wearing a flak jacket over her pantsuit. "Secure the hallway," Voss shouted. 2 agents moved past us to secure the unconscious lieutenant. "Are you okay?" Tessa asked, helping me to my feet. "I am alive," I said. "Where are they?" "They are trying to leave via the VIP elevator." Tessa said, "Shelby, Holloway, and your parents. They think they can get to the helipad on the roof." "They aren't flying anywhere," Mason said. His voice was hard, deeper than I remembered. He looked at me. "Do you want to see them?" I thought about the conversation in the room. "Just make it quick." "Yes," I said. "I want to see them." We moved as a unit, me, Mason, Tessa, and the tactical team. We sprinted for the elevator banks. The panel showed the car was descending, not ascending. "They aren't going to the roof," I said. "They are going to the parking garage. They are trying to run." "Cut them off," Voss ordered into her radio. "Seal the garage exits." We took the stairs, taking them 2 at a time. My dress tore, but I didn't care. We burst out into the underground parking structure just as the elevator doors slid open. Shelby and Holloway came out first, guns drawn. They froze when they saw the wall of federal agents waiting for them. "Drop it," an agent screamed. Federal agents dropped the weapons. Shelby looked at Holloway. For a second, I thought they might shoot. Then, the realization of the odds hit them. The guns clattered to the concrete. Behind them, cowering in the back of the elevator, were my parents. Russell and Diane Graham stepped out slowly, their hands raised. They looked small. The arrogance of the VIP suite was gone. The calculation was gone. They just looked like 2 frightened, middle-aged people caught in a spotlight they couldn't control. Mom saw me. She lowered her hand slightly. "Kendall," she cried out, her voice pitching up into that fake, hysterical motherly tone. "Oh, thank God, Kendall. Baby, are you okay? These men, they forced us. They kidnapped Mason." She ran toward me, arms open, playing the role of the relieved mother to the very end. She thought she could still spin it. She thought she could hug me and whisper a lie that would fix everything. I didn't move. I didn't flinch. But Mason did. Mason stepped in front of me. He put a hand on Mom's chest and shoved her back. It wasn't a violent shove, but it was firm. It was a barrier. "Stop," Mason said. Mom stopped, stunned. "Mason, honey, it's Mom. We were so worried." "Stop acting," Mason said. His voice echoed in the concrete garage, silencing the agents, silencing the sirens wailing in the distance. "We heard you," Mason said. He looked at Dad, then back at Mom. "We heard you in the room. We heard you trade Kendall for a clean ledger. We heard Dad say to make it quick. Dad's face turned the color of ash. Son, you don't understand the pressure. I am not your son right now, Mason said. He stood straighter, the bruised boy finally becoming the shield. And I am not your excuse. You don't get to use me to justify killing my sister. You don't get to say you did it for love. He reached out and took my hand. His grip was iron. It is over, Mason said. We are done. Mom opened her mouth to speak, to lie, to manipulate, but the sound of heavy boots approached. Russell Graham, Diane Graham, Tessa said, stepping forward with a pair of handcuffs. You are under arrest for conspiracy, kidnapping, and money laundering. The heavy metal doors of the garage entrance rolled up with a deafening rattle. Blue and red lights flooded the cavernous space, washing over my parents' faces. They looked at me one last time, not with love, but with the terrified realization that the compliance officer and the IT guy had finally closed their file. I watched Tessa snap the cuffs on my mother's wrists. I need a lawyer, Mom snapped, the mask falling back into place. You are going to need a lot more than that, I whispered. The tactical team moved in, swarming the scene. But in the center of the chaos, standing in the rain-soaked dress and the dirty jeans, Mason and I stood still. We were orphans now, by choice and by circumstance. But as I squeezed my brother's hand, I knew we were finally safe. The underground parking garage of the convention center had transformed from a scene of high society crime into a sterile processing zone for federal justice. The air, previously thick with exhaust and the expensive perfume of the gala attendees, now smelled of sweat, adrenaline, and the metallic tang of handcuffs. Tessa Harrow stood in the center of the chaos, her voice cutting through the noise of squawking radios and shouting agents. She held up a clear plastic evidence bag, not the one from the backpack, but a new one, containing a document that had been retrieved from my father's jacket pocket during the pat-down. You thought you could negotiate, Tessa said, her voice projecting to the small circle of agents surrounding my parents. You thought you were trading a hard drive for immunity, but you forgot the first rule of compliance. There is always a paper trail. She turned the bag so the overhead fluorescent lights illuminated the paper inside. We didn't just decrypt the drive Mason stole, Tessa announced. We found the original partnership agreement, dated 4 years ago. It outlines the structure of the shell companies used to wash the narcotics money, and right there, next to Commander Shelby's initials, is a full signature. She looked at my father. Russell Graham, you didn't just join this conspiracy to pay off a debt last month. You were a founding member of the laundering network. You built the washing machine. The silence that followed was absolute. I looked at my father. For years, he had played the role of the bumbling, unlucky entrepreneur, the man who just couldn't catch a break. It was all a lie. He wasn't unlucky. He was the architect. Beside him, my mother's face twisted, the mask of the concerned, victimized housewife cracked and fell away completely, revealing something feral underneath. It was his idea, Diane screamed. She lunged toward Russell, her cuffed hands awkward and heavy. He told me it was safe. He told me it was just consulting. I did what he told me to do. You liar, Russell roared back, his face turning a mottled purple. You were the one who wanted the house on the lake. You were the one who pushed me to talk to Shelby. And you are the one who made the call to Kendall. I did it to save Mason, Diane shrieked, tears streaming down her face. Tears of rage, not sorrow. I did everything to save the family. You called her, Russell shouted, desperate to shift the narrative before the federal agents taking notes. I told you to let it go, but you said we needed a mule. You said Kendall was too stupid to look in the bag. I stood 10 feet away, watching them tear each other apart. It was grotesque. It was pathetic. And it was the most validating thing I had ever seen. They weren't powerful masterminds. They were just greedy, frightened people willing to consume their own children to survive. Assistant U.S. Attorney Voss stepped forward. She didn't look impressed. She looked bored, like she was watching a rerun of a bad soap opera. Save it for the jury, Voss said. Get them processed. Separate transport vehicles. I don't want them coordinating a new story on the way to federal holding. As 2 agents moved to drag my parents toward the waiting vans, Mason stepped forward. He looked battered, his eye swollen shut, his t-shirt stained with mud and blood, but he stood taller than I had ever seen him. Wait, Mason said. The agents paused. Mason looked at the investigator holding the clipboard. I want to make a statement, Mason said. His voice was raspy but clear. Right now, while they are listening. Go ahead, son, Voss said. They didn't just launder money, Mason said, pointing a shaking finger at our parents. They imprisoned me. For 3 days. They locked me in the house. They took my phone. They hired a guard to stand on the porch to keep me from leaving. And when I tried to warn my sister, they beat me and handed me over to the men who put me in that trunk. He took a deep breath, his eyes locking onto Mom's face. They used their parental authority to facilitate a kidnapping, Mason declared. They used the fact that I trusted them, and the fact that Kendall loved them, to build a trap. It wasn't coercion, it was strategy. My mother's face went slack. She opened her mouth to speak, to invoke the "I gave you life" card, but the look in Mason's eyes stopped her dead. Voss nodded to the stenographer who was typing furiously on a tablet. Noted, kidnapping charges added to the RICO indictment. Voss turned to me. Her expression softened slightly, losing some of its prosecutorial edge. Ms. Graham, she said, we have enough to put them away for 20 years on the financial crimes alone. But for the conspiracy to commit murder charge, the charge regarding the order to silence you, we usually ask the victim if they want to facilitate a statement. Sometimes, families want to clear the air. Do you want to hear what they have to say? Do you want an apology? I looked at Russell and Diane. They were watching me with a desperate, hungry intensity. I could see the wheels turning in my mother's head. She was crafting the perfect apology, the perfect plea that would play on my guilt, on my history as the dutiful daughter. She was ready to cry, to beg, to promise that she hadn't meant it. I felt a ghost of the old Kendall rise up, the Kendall who wanted everyone to get along, who fixed the problems, who smoothed over the cracks. Then I remembered the text message. She needs to be silent. I killed that ghost. I strangled it right there on the concrete floor. No, I said. My voice was calm, flat, and final. I don't need an apology. Kendall, please, Mom wailed. I didn't mean it like that. I was scared. I don't need to hear why you did it, I continued, ignoring her completely and addressing Voss. An apology implies a mistake. This wasn't a mistake. It was a transaction. I don't want their words. I want the truth recorded in the file. I want the audio played. Play it, Voss ordered Tessa. Tessa pulled a digital recorder from her vest. She held it up high. She pressed play. The garage was silent, save for the hum of the ventilation fans. Then, amplified by the acoustics of the concrete box, my mother's voice rang out, clear and sharp. I want to be debt-free, and I want my son safe. If Kendall has to be removed to make that happen, then that is her choice. Then my father's voice. Just make it quick. Don't let her suffer. The recording clicked off. The shame in the room was palpable, but it didn't belong to me. It settled like a heavy blanket over my parents. Russell slumped in the grip of the agents, unable to lift his head. Diane stared at the floor, her mouth opening and closing wordlessly. That is the record, I said to Voss. That is all I need. At the far end of the garage, a commotion erupted. Commander Shelby and Judge Holloway were being led out in zip ties. Shelby, the man who had run this district like a fiefdom, looked small and gray. He spotted a news crew that had managed to get past the police line at the garage entrance. He tried to duck his head, but it was too late. The cameras flashed. The blue wall just fell, Tessa whispered beside me. Tomorrow morning, the entire leadership of the Vice Squad and the Superior Court will be suspended. The system is eating itself. Good, I said. Let them choke on it. The agents began to move my parents toward the armored vans. This was it, the final departure. Kendall, Mom screamed, twisting in the agent's grip. She wasn't acting anymore. The reality of federal prison, of dying in a cage, had finally pierced her narcissism. Kendall, look at me. I am your mother. You can't let them take me. I walked over to them. I stopped 3 feet away, close enough to see the sweat on their brows, far enough to be out of reach. I looked at them. Really looked at them. For the first time in my life without the filter of filial duty. I didn't see giants. I didn't see authority figures. I saw 2 bankrupt moral vacuums. You aren't my mother, I said to Diane. You are just the woman who packed the bag. I turned to Russell. And you aren't my father. You are just the man who signed the receipt. Kendall, he croaked. Do not contact us, I said. Do not put us on your visitation list. Do not write letters. If you try to reach out to Mason or me, I will consider it a violation of the witness protection protocols, and I will add harassment to your file. This is the end. I turned my back on them. Get them out of here, Voss ordered. The van doors slammed shut with a heavy, final thud. The engines roared, and the vehicles peeled out of the garage, carrying the wreckage of my past into the night. I stood there, staring at the empty space where the vans had been. My legs felt weak, shaking with the aftershocks of adrenaline. A hand took mine. I looked down. Mason was there. He squeezed my hand, his knuckles white. "I am sorry," he whispered. "For what?" "For hiding," he said. "For hiding behind you all those years when Dad got angry. For letting you be the shield. If I had stood up sooner, maybe they wouldn't have thought they could use you." I looked at my little brother. He wasn't the boy hiding in the corner anymore. He was the man who had hacked a federal building and taken a beating to save my life. "You didn't hide today," I said softly. "You saved me." "We saved each other," Mason said. "From now on," I said, squeezing his hand back. "The dynamic changes. No more shields, no more shadows. We stand side by side." "Side by side," he agreed. "And no one uses us as bait ever again." "Never again," I promised. Tessa walked over to us. She looked exhausted, her blazer torn, her face smudged with soot, but she was smiling. "We are done here," she said. "I have a car waiting to take you to a hotel, a real hotel, 5 stars. Room service is on the bureau." "That sounds perfect," I said. We walked toward the exit of the garage. The ramp led upward, toward the street level. As we emerged from the underground darkness, the cool night air hit my face. It was crisp and clean, smelling of rain and wet pavement. The street was a kaleidoscope of flashing blue and red lights from the police cruisers. But for the first time, they didn't look like a threat. They looked like the cleanup crew. I stopped at the curb and took a deep breath. My lungs expanded fully, no longer constricted by the weight of secrets and obligations. I looked at the city skyline, then at Mason, then at the road ahead. The backpack was gone. The parents were gone. The compliance officer who lived in a box was gone. I exhaled, watching my breath mist in the cool air, and realized that the sweetest part of revenge wasn't seeing them in handcuffs. It was the quiet, absolute certainty that they could never, ever touch us again. I stepped forward into the light, ready to start the first day of my real life. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I would love to know where you are tuning in from today. So please leave a comment down below sharing your location and your thoughts on Kendall's decision. If you enjoyed this story, please make sure to subscribe to the Maya Revenge Stories channel, like this video, and hit that hype button so we can share these stories with even more people. See you in the next video.